All right, some people are going to keep filtering in, but let's go ahead and get started. Good evening, everybody. This is Damian Wright, and I wanted to start by thanking everyone from the Save America Discord for joining us tonight for this event in our AMA Digital Town Hall series. We appreciate every single one of you for taking the time to sit down with our guest today and getting to know him this early in our nation's next midterm election. Now, it might be a little early, but right now is an important time for us to really decide, as a cultural and political movement, where we want to go from here. So tonight we're joined by David Giglio, who's who's a declared congressional candidate for California's 16th district. The district's currently represented by Democrat Jim Costa. Currently, the district includes Merced counties, most of Madera County, and part of Fresno County. Cities in the district include Los Baños, Madera, Merced, and I believe most of Fresno.
hmm
Yep. So David, I'm gonna go ahead and let you introduce yourself. I'm pretty familiar with your campaign so far, but I'm gonna let you start by giving us a good background of how you got here and a little bit about why you've decided to declare your candidacy for Congress.
no problem. Thanks for having me. I'm out here in California's 16th congressional district. It's been a Democratic-held district since it was redistricted 10 years ago. Jim Costa's been in Congress from the Valley since 2003. If you know the Valley and you know Jim Costa's current voting record and how he's been voting for a long time, you know it's completely at odds with what the people out here believe. Um, but he keeps winning, and there's a few reasons for that. Anyway, how did I get here? Well, I got here. I'm a former school teacher. I now own my own business in Clovis, California, which is right outside the district, but very close. I do sports cards and memorabilia now. My wife is a nurse practitioner at Valley Children's Hospital, which is in Madera. That's actually the reason we're in California. We moved out here. She got that job out of grad school. And, I'm originally from the East Coast in Connecticut, another nice liberal state. But I was motivated after the election. Obviously, I'm a Republican. I voted for President Trump. I supported President Trump all the way. Um, Pretty dejected after the election, kind of frustrated about where everything was going. And one day I just sat there and said, listen, I could sit here, I could be depressed, I could be angry, I could be disgusted with the process and what's going on, or I could, stand up and try and do something about it. And I just decided that I was going to do something about that. I was going to try and run. I've never run for office before. I've worked on campaigns, but I said, we need people who are going to stand up and who are going to fight. And I think after the election, we saw how important it is that we get those type of people in office on the Republican side, people that are willing to fight and stand on principle. Otherwise, we're going to lose the country.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing.
No problem.
It's definitely a process. I think getting involved in politics to the level that
hmm
you've now gotten yourself there. I was wondering if you could just kind of get our feet wet and just let us know. There's a barrier I'm assuming that's crossed from going from I'm interested in politics to I'm putting my name behind something and I want to declare that I'm going to be running for Congress. What's the one thing that if you can identify something, what's the one thing you think that really pushed you over the edge?
Oh, well, what pushed me over the edge was probably, honestly, I'm going to say it in truth, was the lack of fight by a lot of Republicans after the election. I had supported the Republican Party. I've supported the president. I think we all in here did. We all were hoping for a victory, and many of us, it appeared we had a victory. And I was motivated by the same old thing with the Republican Party, not standing on principle and being afraid to fight when the going gets tough. I think a lot of Republicans don't understand the media is going to hate them no matter what, and you're never going to please people by backing away, and they're counting on us to back down. And we need people that are going to stand up there and are going to say no, because it started in California. See what's gone on here in my state here. Every time you give the Democrats an inch, they're going to take, a whole football field's worth. And so you have to show them that you're willing to fight back. Otherwise, they're going to become more and more emboldened. And I think you see that around the country right now. They're very emboldened. They're moving very fast with everything that they said they wanted to do. And, I felt a lot of it had to do with the fact that we didn't have Republicans elected that were willing to fight, not just this past election, but over the last 4 years. And so I said, listen, I'm going to fill out the paperwork. Jim Costa is about as out of touch as they get. This is a pretty conservative area of California, and I originally lived in Devin Nunes's district. So when I moved over to Madera, I was actually surprised that it was a Democrat, because if you know the people out in Madera, and if you know the people in Merced, and even most of Fresno, it's a pretty conservative area. And you're thinking, man, how's this guy sticking around? How's this guy winning by 20 points every time, when people clearly don't match with his voting record? And I'll give you a little more insight on what's going on there. But yeah, that's kind of got me where I am.
Right on. Well, I'd like to start by one of our regulars bringing up a question here. Let's bring him on board. K-Mox, forgive me, this is the first time I've done this, but K-Mox, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Awesome, go for it, buddy.
I'm one of the more well-known regulars here on here. I'm autistic, but that's ideal there. But my question is, I saw this thing earlier of them. Yeah, there's evidence of duplicating votes, and what could we do? Like, what could be done to stop, like, say, the dead from voting, or we all of a sudden see 4 people, all the same persons voting in different places? What can we do about that?
Well, that's a good question, and I get it a lot. There's a lot of people here in Fresno County that are really upset, and asking that same question, because there's a lot of people that are questioning the results out here. Obviously, they have the voting machines out here, but there's plenty of other reasons for that. Not just that, but what can you do about it? So one of the things I've been telling people is, we still have to vote. And I'm not going to lie to you. I felt the same way after the election. With some of these people said, "Man, why do I want to vote again? What's gonna, what does it matter?" But then I said, that's what they want. So the first thing we have to do is we have to vote. The other thing we can do is, like we said out here. So Fresno County, the Board of Supervisors is still majority Republican. But they've been hesitant to clean up the voter rolls and do that kind of thing. So what can people do? People have to get involved in the process. Not saying everybody has to run for office, but if you want change, you have to make your voices heard to the people that make the decisions. And a lot of it. So here I've been telling people, listen, you got to go to those Board of Supervisors meetings, and you got to tell them, hey, do something, right? We elected you to fight for us. We're concerned. What's the worst that's going to happen if you look into this kind of stuff? Clean up the voter rolls, ease our confidence, right? Restore our confidence in the process. It's not something that's fun for them to do, and nobody wants to. There's two folds. This, I struggled with the reason, like, hey, how come a lot of Republicans don't want to? Like I said, this is even in Michigan, how come a lot of Republican-controlled legislatures or Board of Supervisors don't want to look into it and don't want to deal with it? Nobody wants to go back and find that funny business happened on their watch. So there's a lot of that, like, it kind of reflects on them. But you need to speak up. You need to go to these meetings and make your voice heard, because if they see enough people that are calling for it, I mean, that's what's going to get it done. But we can't sit down and we can't just retreat and say, our voice doesn't matter, our vote doesn't matter, because that's what the other side wants. They do, the voter fraud thing is really, they're amplifying it now more than you think, as kind of a psyop on us, because they want us to think, it hurts us more than it hurts them, because they know that if they can deject us even more and get people not to vote, they're going to win. So we still have to vote, but you can make your voices heard. You got to go to these Board of Supervisors meetings. Send emails, especially on local levels. A lot of the rules and the laws are done on state and local levels. So those people will hear your emails. You think they don't, but trust me, I'm running a congressional campaign and I hear all the emails and I see all the stuff. This is a tougher race for a Republican, but those people on those local county supervisor boards, they get those messages. They hear your voices if you show up. So people have to show up. Hope that was a good one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great.
No problem.
Well, why don't we bring on one of our nimble navigators, Pamului. Pam, go ahead.
Hello, David.
Thanks. Hey, hello. How are you doing?
Doing fine. Thanks. About yourself?
I'm doing all right.
Good.
Been making donor calls all day, so this is a little more refreshing than getting voicemails and hung up on.
Stay happy over there in the West Coast.
Yeah.
For you. My question is, what I know that the ballot harvesting in California is very egregious.
Mhm.
What do you make of any attempts to? What can be done to reverse that anytime soon? And what do you think about Judicial Watch's uh, attempt to remove millions of voters, uh, expired voters, and invalid voters from LA County recently?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. So
Go ahead.
I'm fully supportive of cleaning up the voter rolls. I think the ballot harvesting is an issue. And one of the reasons it's an issue is because obviously the Democrats are the first ones to really start it out here, and they came up with that way of, hey, this is a way we can really wipe out Republicans, and it worked. They used ballot harvesting to take over the state. I mean, they have super majorities in both houses. But and for a long time, Republicans were, hey, we're not getting involved in that. But now we're starting to say, listen, here's the problem. The law isn't going to change in California unless we make in-grounds in the state assembly, um, or it gets challenged, and it's going to have to get to the Supreme Court because the California courts are unlikely, at least on a state level, are unlikely to overturn it. So we got to get it in a federal court, and it's going to have to get it's probably going to make its way, even regardless of what happens in the lower courts, it's going to get appealed by either side. So that would be a way to get it to the Supreme Court. Other than that, the only way you're going to get it changed in California is it's got to get through. We have to make inroads in the state assembly, and I'm fully supportive of clean up voter rolls. I think everybody should want clean voter rolls. That's something that in Fresno County, a lot of people are talking about. We estimate there's about 19,000 erroneous or not valid voters in the Fresno voting rolls, and it has a big, especially now where we've had the unsolicited mail-in balloting due to the emergency order, where now it's just everybody's getting a ballot mailed out. So those 19,000 people that shouldn't be on the ballot are getting a ballot, and you're supposed to trust that those ballots aren't going to be turned in or whatnot. So voting rolls need to be cleaned up. It's a very hard fight, and it takes a lot for people to embark on that fight, because you're going to get a lot of pushback from the left, because they don't want those voter rolls cleaned up. So you have to really, like I said, go back. People have to stand up and force the issue. In Fresno, like I said, there's a board of supervisors controlled by Republicans. Try and get them to clean it up. That's something that's important around the country. With ballot harvesting, like I said, it's not really going to go away anytime soon, because we're really outnumbered in the state assembly. So it's going to take time to claw back there. But sadly, one of the things, well, not sadly, Republicans we need to start playing the game too, because Democrats don't like it when you start playing their own game back. So they like the ballot harvesting now because they're the ones doing it and it's working. But there's a concerted effort around here now amongst Republicans saying, hey, listen, we're tired of playing this game with them. If they want to play the ballot harvesting game, we can't get rid of it. We're going to play it just as hard as they are. And that's what has to be happen across the country. So they love the ballot harvesting game because they're the ones who've mastered it. Now what needs to happen is Republicans need to say, hey, if you want to play the game, we're going to play it. So, and then they're not going to like it as much after that. So when it starts not being fully benefiting them, then you'll see how quick they decide they don't like it. Yeah, so we have to start playing the game. It's legal, and it's being used to wipe us out. So we need to fight back and say we're going to fight just as hard. Set up ballot drop boxes in churches, set up ballot drop boxes in staunch Republican areas and businesses. Collect those ballots, and you'll see how fast they decide they don't like it anymore.
Do you think that's going to be a popular policy or position with your voters in your district, specifically Republicans?
I think a lot of Republicans have decided, county parties, people talking, that we're gonna try it. Especially we're gonna try it out, especially with the recall coming up, where they want to harvest ballots. They want to really get ballots in. We need to. They understand what's at stake. People out here understand what's at stake. Like I said, this part of California is a lot different than what people think of when they think of California politics. Unfortunately, a lot of the votes that decide the state are in the two big cities, right? San Francisco and Los Angeles. And San Diego used to be more conservative, but ballot harvesting's done away down there. But yeah, Republicans are waking up out here, because people are saying, listen, if we want to fight back, if we want to save the state, we got to start playing the game too. And actually, it started last election. Republicans started putting up some drop boxes out here, And the Democrats were very angry about it. They were unhappy. They said, oh, you can't have those drop boxes because they weren't locked and sealed and this and that. And they tried to stop it. They sued to stop it. So now we're going to do it the exact way that's written in the law. So yeah, it's something that people are recognizing. Hey, play their game and then they won't like it anymore. It's kind of like that kid thing. Your friend likes to do it because he's going to beat you. But then when you use their own trick against them, they don't like it anymore.
You're telling me that we need to be the dungeon master in our D&D of politics?
We just need to be a little more creative. I think for so long Republicans, and I get it. We want to play by the rules. We believe the rules are, we value the Constitution. I value the Constitution. That's another reason why I'm running, is it's not just a piece of paper. We shouldn't look at the Constitution as an obstacle. But the laws are written now where ballot harvesting is legal, and it's a sport now, right? This is a game, and the Democrats are convinced. The Democrats right now are in the mode where they want to wipe us off the board. And if they think of it, they're motivated by the quest for power, and we want to protect our country and protect our rights. So if we let them, they're going to try and wipe us out. And we got to be smart. We got to fight back. Harvest the ballots, get the Republican ballots and the independent ballots, make sure people get them in. Not in a dubious way. I mean, there's nothing wrong with harvesting it. If it's a legitimate ballot and you get it harvested in, that's good. Make sure those ballots get banked in, because we're going to need all the votes we can get with it going up against the machine here.
Absolutely. You hear that a lot. There's kind of feels like there's an internal, pushback or balance we're trying to find between, playing nice and fair and playing to win.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's some people think, that it's wrong. Like, oh, we should, I don't like ballot harvesting. I don't think ballot harvesting should be legal. I don't like it. I think I just don't think it's right. I think it brings a lot of uncertainty to elections. It's easy for fraud. But if it's not going to be taken away and the Democrats are going to use it against us, we need to try and use it because we need it to win, So I don't personally agree with it, but they're going to try and wipe us out. And I think we saw that in 2020. And then we saw that with HR1, where they basically went for the jugular right off the bat. They said, hey, we got this stuff going. Now let's pass this bill and let's get it around the whole country. So they're committed to that.
All righty. Well, let's give Proto a chance here. Proto, let's share your question.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. I just wanted to ask a question. We're talking about how they're basically playing a completely different game than we are. And that's one of the things I've noticed, is that they're playing for keeps. And at what point are we going to make them afraid of us? And what I'm not talking about violence here, but I'm giving you an example. When we actually go against them, they cancel you, they ban your account, they'll find out where you live, they'll make sure you're fired, they'll try to hurt you financially, they'll threaten your family. If that doesn't work, they go to their Stasi that's in the streets with BLM and Antifa. And we are governed by morality and a certain set of principles and ethics that we are not going to stoop to that level. So how do we defeat an enemy? Because they are enemies at this point. I consider anybody that wants to destroy this country an enemy. And they basically want to wipe us out, like you were saying. How do we fight back against an enemy that is completely playing again with a different set of rules?
Well, one of the things we have to understand is the Democrats are very organized, and they're very good at certain things. They're very good at get out the vote efforts. Historically they've been very good at registering voters. They've been very good at organization. They're very good at getting young people involved in the party, and a lot of it, the Trump team actually did a lot over 4 years to try and build up the Republican apparatus around the country in terms of getting out the votes, registering voters, all across the nation. And that's something that we have to do. Now, I know you're talking about being canceled and all this stuff, but a lot of the fight starts with, we have to be better at doing those things well, getting out the vote movements, getting more involved in registering voters. I hear it a lot. A lot of Republicans feel like, okay, well, they kind of see it as it's a personal thing. Personal responsibility. I'm going to make sure I vote, right? That's my personal responsibility. But they have to start thinking, well, now I got to make sure my family member votes. I got to make sure, my cousin votes. I got to make sure my kids vote. So we have to do better of mobilizing the things that the Democrats have been so successful at. And you can see it on the ground, especially in places like here in the district I'm in. They're very well organized with getting out the vote. They're very well organized with getting engaged in certain areas. They're going into places that Republicans don't typically go. And for reasons, Republicans think I'm not welcome there. But you saw what Trump did in 2016, right? He went into places in Michigan and Wisconsin, and places where no Republican goes, and he spoke to those people, and it worked. And people laughed at him. Republicans laughed at him. What are you doing in Michigan the day before the election, right? You're going to lose by 10 points there. And he's like, oh, I think I'm going to win here. So Republicans need to do better at that. There has to be, and that's what I talked about going and fighting. We need Republicans who are committed to taking on the hard battles and doing the hard work. With being canceled and stuff, it is unfortunate what goes on. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in freedom of speech. I was a teacher, so I don't think anybody should ever tell people what they can and can't say. We just have to, make sure that we're fighting back and getting people elected and working hard to get people elected. They're going to push back against this kind of big tech tyranny and this kind of thing, because right now they're just really emboldened, and they see that we back down a lot, right? They see a lot of our elected Republicans that don't want to fight the fight and stand up and say, no, this is wrong. This isn't how America works. So we just got to make sure we're getting people in that are going to be good voices to us and that are going to push back, because if we display strength, things are going to turn around. But we do need to get better at the groundwork. People need to get involved in the election process. We're all unhappy with what's going on, but I can't stress this enough. People have to volunteer. Get involved and get out the vote movements. Volunteer to be poll watchers. Volunteer to be precinct captains. That's something we're really pushing here in Fresno, where you go out, you mobilize your neighborhood, you make sure they're getting out to vote. You're educating them on the candidates. We have to do a better job at that. The Democrats are really good at that. They've been good at that for a long time, and it over time it has a huge impact on elections and victories.
Yeah, it's really insane, isn't it?
Yeah, they're very good at those kind of things, and we're starting. The Trump team, like I said, did a really good job of trying to build up the Republicans apparatus, but we need to help out too. People need to get involved.
I agree. I think a lot of people are constantly waiting for being told what to do. And I think that the message that we heard loud and clear come from us from political strategy in the last election was that you can't just count on everybody at the top just to disseminate orders and everything will be fine. I think that
Yeah.
our opponents definitely proved that it takes a large group to get what you want done, right?
So
No, yeah, and I understand that a lot of people are upset with the Republican Party. They're angry after the election. I was one of those people. I was angry. But we need to change it, to win it, to take it back. That's how you do it. You get involved at the local levels. Go down, volunteer. Go to meetings. Like I said, be precinct captains, be poll watchers, because honestly, the Democrats control all that stuff. The poll watchers and the precinct captains, they're outnumbered Republicans all over the place. So people need to get involved. And if you're involved in your Republican committees on local and state levels, you actually have a lot more influence on who becomes your candidates than you think you do. Your input and your stuff matters. People think, oh, what am I going to do on a Republican town council? What am I going to do on that? Or in a Republican town committee or a city, county committee? Your impact actually is a lot more than you think on those local levels. Everybody thinks of it in terms of, oh, president. But we can make a huge change by making inroads in state and local offices. That's really where the fight begins. And that's where we have to start fighting back. State legislatures, state offices, county school boards, that kind of thing. But it's a hard work, and people just got to stand up. I know it's a lot of time. I run my business, and I'm basically running this campaign full time now, so it's not easy.
now, and if I could just jump in real quick and ask you a question, sort of related here. So about people getting involved and getting motivated to go out and be proactive.
Mhm.
We do have a couple of users in here that I know of, and I see at least one here that may have aspirations to actually run for office. So, obviously, the biggest thing that they have to try to confront is putting their name out there. They're putting their own reputation on the line, and they may be second guessing themselves. So, I'm just kind of curious how you've dealt with the pressure up to this point that may have been building.
Well, so it's a good question. So, the biggest obstacle I have is I've not held a public office. Okay. I'm running, I've never run for office before. And I decided to run for a congressional seat. Right. So, and I'm relatively new to, I've been out in California about 4.5 years. So, my name recognition is a battle. And that's why I declared early. But I've seen the fight, people tell you, oh, people got to know who you are. People got to know this, people got to know that. It's hard. You can't go out and expect everybody's going to flock behind you and support you. Now, I've gotten good feedback, but the party rules out here, like, hey, we can't endorse until primary. Um, so it's not easy work, and that's a big obstacle. Name recognition, putting your name on the line. Now, I've actually had a situation here where we're desperately trying to get people to cover us, because so the NRCC has targeted this race for the first time ever. This district's never been paid attention to. And we have really good, strong fundraising numbers. We have 250 cash on hand, which is relatively unheard of for a Republican in this race. I mean, that's what most Republicans that have run this race have raised the entire cycle. But we're having trouble getting, a news story covered when we issue a press release, because they don't want to help. The Fresno Bee out here is very left. They're not going to want to elevate my name recognition because they want to keep Jim Costa in office. They want to keep it in a Democrat seat. So, some of the obstacles are, name recognition. Obviously, money's an obstacle. You have to decide time-wise. This is taking up a lot of my time. I've pretty much devoted everything to it, especially because I don't have huge name recognition. So I'm going to have to be out there. I'm running what I call it is basically my goal is like a town council race at a district-wide level. And even I want to raise enough money as possible, but I'm also, even if I have a lot of money in this campaign, I'm going to run it like I'm broke, because that's what it's going to take to win a district like this. So, you know, um, yeah, it's tough, but if you really feel called to it, it's worth doing. It's worth giving it a shot. But you can't expect everybody just to come out behind you. You got to make sure, at the end of the day, listen to yourself, listen to whoever you have that's your close advisor, and just expect to be on your own for a little bit.
Alrighty. Well, why don't we bring on our next question asker, Blazer? If you'd accept.
Oh,
Welcome,
yeah.
Blazer.
Hello, David. How's it going?
Good. How's it going?
It is going swell over here in good old Minnesota. So, since
Minnesota.
California is, I would classify it as the leader of technology in the state, and when it comes to like Android devices and Apple devices and stuff like that, over in the other coast, there is a content creator called Louis Rossman, and he is doing something for a right to repair initiative and trying to get a direct to ballot initiative. What can you potentially do to be the trendsetter over in the West Coast to start that ball rolling so that it can meet like between the Minnesota Louisiana line and the nation somewhere?
So you mean that specific measure? What can you do in terms of getting ballot measures on?
Yeah, like what is your take on the right to repair, as in preventing chip manufacturers, motor manufacturers, et cetera, from being able to sell directly to the users of the product that they would go into,
Okay, I
and
get what you're saying.
stuff like that. So,
Well, it's actually interesting that you say this. So it's interesting because I do sports cards and memorabilia now. The market's been really hot actually the past year or so. And what happens here is, so there's a middleman here with me. I buy my stuff through a distributor. You can get it direct through the manufacturer, but you can see right now that it's slowly creeping in that the manufacturers of the cards, hey, there's this big piece of the pie, right? The profit margins have been really high for the last year or so, and these manufacturers are saying, wait a minute, we're selling all this stuff to the distributors for this low price when I could just cut out all the middlemen and sell it directly to them. Now that's a concern for me because that would hurt me, right? If these Tops and Panini started selling it on their website and I wasn't able to get it, then that hurts my business. So um so you obviously want to stop the chips from going in. I mean, ballot initiatives, it's new to me because in Connecticut we don't have ballot initiatives. So where I grew up, and it's a new concept to me. So um you know California uses it a lot. People, but it takes an organized group, and it takes a lot of. Most of the time, it comes from a lot of influential people that want to get something on the ballot. So it's not an easy thing to do. But how do I support stopping it? Well, I mean, that's something we have to think about when we get to Congress. I mean, the manufacturers want to go direct to the consumers. They want to cut out middlemen, obviously. And I believe, I'm pretty much into, I like less regulation better than more. So I don't, I think the government's got its hand in too much things. I don't know if that's what you're getting at.
I think for sure. I think he's
Yeah.
definitely it's a specific issue, but I think that it
Yeah,
definitely has a
I'm not
lot of.
familiar as much on that one, but with ballot initiatives, yeah, I mean, it just takes a lot of groundwork. I mean, that's how we got Newsom recalled. I mean, it started here in the Central Valley, so it's a lot of just getting signatures and getting things on the ballot.
Let me ask a follow up to that comment. And this is totally like just you. Yeah, I'm curious your prediction, but come the end of all of that and everything shakes out, who do you think California's next governor is going to be? Just because we're all interested.
Well, man, it's tough. I really want to hope that we get the 50% plus one. I know in the Central Valley, we've done some polling through the area in terms of, I call it feasibility polling. I haven't done head-to-head polling, but he's still underwater here. Now, he's given away a lot of free things. You probably hear it every day in the news. If you follow the recall out here, we had a budget surplus, and Newsom's been giving away freebies for a while. I think the biggest challenge has been the lack of a strong conservative challenger. And a lot of candidates, Larry Elder just got in. Kevin Kiley is a big influential assemblyman who's fought Gavin Newsom all the way. Where do I think it's going to end at the finish line? Well, I think we're going to get the recall passed. If I had to put money on it, I think it'll be probably end up between Kevin Kiley and John Cox does have the name recognition because he ran last time, so it's going to be interesting. I haven't seen I'm actually surprised by the lack of polling that's come out in term. I figured they'd be polling this stuff every day, but there hasn't been really many recent polls. A lot of people have gotten in the race, and they haven't done as many polls as I thought they would. So yeah, Kevin Kiley's probably at the top. I'd be interested to see where the polls show Larry Elder when he first comes out. It's going to be between Kiley, Cox, and Faulkner, probably. I also like Doug Osee, very conservative, good guy, former congressman from up north. He's somebody, if you're interested and you're in California, you should check him out. He's a good guy.
Well, why don't we bring on Dankled, who's one of our mods, who should be able to give you another question here.
Cool.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, David, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
I'm all right. All right. So my question is, being in California, you probably hear it day in and day out about climate change and the environment. But meanwhile, they're pushing electric cars and solar panels where the chemicals used and how they're obtained is actually more harmful to the environment than just using normal gasoline cars and using clean coal. But I got to ask you, I believe in pursuing alternative energy measures, but they have to be practical and work. What's your stance on things like nuclear energy and hydrogen fuel cells for cars?
Before you actually threw that last part in, I was actually going to talk a lot about nuclear energy because I'm always surprised by this movement with the clean energy movement, and then everybody always ignores nuclear power, and it's very puzzling to me because it's one of the cleanest forms of energy you can get. And it's that hot button. People don't like the word nuclear, I think, and they just want to avoid it. They think, oh, people aren't going to like it if we say nuclear. But we need to educate people on how beneficial it is and actually how clean it is and proficient it is. So I'm all for protecting the environment. Listen, I think we all want to, we don't want to destroy our environment, but we also understand what's going on. Like you just said, some of these solutions that they're pushing aren't actually going to help the environment. And in a way, I talked to somebody about this, like you said, with the electric cars, right? So they want to push electric cars in California by 2035. It's an unrealistic expectation when our current power grid can't even handle the current amount of electricity that goes through it. So, and the electric car technology isn't going to be where it needs to be by 2035. So, we can't just wage a war on the oil industries, and you see what happened. I mean the oil industries and those fossil fuels, though, where would we be without oil, right? I mean, oil saves lives. I mean, look what happened in Texas during the storm there, right? People didn't have oil. Oil would have been heating those houses. So oil saves lives, and we need to look at different ways. But nuclear power needs to be looked at. And actually, a big issue out here is dam storage, because we need water storage. And so we haven't gotten a dam built out here in like 60 years, and farmers out here are desperate for new water storage. And hey, what's another way to get electricity? Hydroelectric power. And now they're actually talking about getting rid of dams up along the California-Oregon border because of environmental concerns. And that kind of thing is crazy. So they want renewable energy, but they're not supporting some of the most proficient means of renewable energy. Nuclear energy is clean, it's extremely effective, and we need to educate the public on that. And it's not something that should be ignored. And it's actually a lot more practical. We can already do it, right? We can already do it, implement it successfully now. So why not look into it? A lot of countries use nuclear power way more efficiently and effectively than we do. And people don't bring it up enough when the Democrats talk about clean energy. We should say, hey, I'm all for clean energy. Why don't we do nuclear power?
Yeah, it's something that feels like a lot of people are just scared over based on historical
Well, it's that
factors,
word,
but
right? Because
yeah.
when you think of nuclear, what do you think of? A nuclear bomb exploding, right? And people get very concerned, obviously, the meltdowns of the past. But we need to educate people on how rare those occurrences are and actually the benefits of it. Nobody wants to take up that mantra and push it. And it's an opportunity for Republicans to say, listen, we support clean energy. Let's talk about nuclear power. It's some of the cleanest energy out there. Why don't you guys want to go and try this? Because it's a lot more, we're more further along in that technology than we are in some of the other ones. Like you hear our power grids, we have rolling blackouts across the state all the time. So imagine putting everybody on electric cars with our current power grid. It's not going to work.
Do you think that you think you'll see nuclear power reintroduced in a much higher level within California within the next decade or so? Just winging it.
Probably not, because we had, it's just not the left is kind of throwing off nuclear power, and the right hasn't really taken up that. There's not as many on the right have taken up that have fought for it. Because it's a hard PR battle, but so probably not in the next 10 years, but you never know. If things keep going the way they're going in California, like we have a lot of energy crisis, people are tired of blackouts, people are tired of all this stuff. And so maybe people are going to start waking up and pushing it. Now, the problem is you got the media, right? They're going to say, ooh, nuclear. They don't want nuclear power. They've decided they want the electric cars. They want the windmills. They want the solar power. So they're not going to be open to pushing in nuclear power because that's not where their agenda is right now, because they have a lot of money. A lot of people have a lot of money invested in those solar panels and that kind of thing. So that's kind of what it is. In some ways, it's not. I equated it this way. Sometimes it's not even. The goal isn't really for them anymore about helping the environment, because, like you said, some of these solutions they're pushing are actually going to do just as much harm to the environment or worse than traditional sources of energy, than fossil fuels. It's almost like, but there's a lot of people that have invested in them that are going to make money off it. So it's almost like when a sports team has been really bad for a long time and they need a way to get a revenue boost, and they change their uniforms, so all the fans have to go out and buy new uniforms, right? So it's like, hey, how can we make some money, right? We need to, so everybody's got these cars. Well, we can get a bunch of money by with solar panels and chip technology. Let's sell these electric cars, right? That's going to make us a bunch of money. We've invested in all this alternative energy. We got to do that, So sometimes it's not even for the right reasons.
Well, why don't we bring up Guthix's balances next? Guth, let me invite you in here. Give him another sec. There we go.
Hi, Dave.
There he is.
Hey,
How
sorry
you
about
doing?
that. Hi,
No problem.
David. I've got a few questions pertaining mainly to few probably a bit thrown out there, but I was looking over your district and in general, and
Yeah.
it's definitely impressive how much throughput you guys have in capital. Like,
Yeah, it's
sincerely.
a tough district.
It really is. And I was kind of wondering, I'm not sure how it works in California, but my perspective in Louisiana is we have a lot of really, really powerful positions here that we sometimes put trusted people into, like with how based you are on energy, that have an extreme amount of unchecked authority over the entire state. Is there anything that California has like that might be like overlooked by the Democrats in general because they just might not care?
Unfortunately, California, they control pretty much all the offices, and Governor Newsom he's taken the even before Biden started. Biden must have learned from him, but the power of the pen here. He's ruled a lot by executive order. So honestly, in California, you got the governor's office, you got the attorney general and the secretary of state. They wield a lot of power, and they're all controlled by Democrats. And the state assembly is 2/3 majority. So it's really hard. There really isn't a statewide public office that Republicans can kind of get in and wield some power. Now that's why this recall is so important. So this is not your typical election, and this, the unfortunate thing is the winner. If we get the 50+1, you knock Newsom out. He's only going to have a year to govern, but it's still good to show that we can get a Republican in there because this is different. So all we need is 50% +1 to say yes, I want to recall Newsom, and then he's out, and it goes to the ballot, and then a Republican win. You don't have to get the Republican no longer has to win 50% of the vote to win the election, or beat the Democrat, right? So somebody can win this election as a Republican with only 15, 20, 25%. So it's not as hard to win as a Republican in this election. So this is a really big chance for us to get a Republican in there for a year to make some changes because, hey, they're in the governor's office. They can make some of those executive orders. So this is a really big election for the state of California. We need to show that we can get a Republican in that office, and that a Republican can make some changes through executive. He's going to have to do it through executive power because the legislature is a supermajority, so they'll veto whatever he throws their way. But hey, make him sue you in court. Newsom's been using executive order. We need to get a Republican in there to do the same.
Just completely make it about what we want to get done, right?
Yeah, and we just got to show it can be done, and hopefully people see it, say, hey, there was a Republican in there. He's taking action. Let's give him a shot next time around because there's a lot more. We talk about my district. I'm glad he brought up this district. If you went to Cook Political Report and you looked at my district and you saw, some people when you announced me as the thing, they were there. I saw them. They're like, hey, that's a tough district. This is a tough race. I mean, why does this guy got to change? So to say to that, yeah, this district on Cook Political Report looks like a D+9 district, and but people have to understand that, yeah, it's a D+9 district, but there's a lot of factors that go into that make it not really a D+9 district. There's a lot of the Democrats in this district are not your same. These aren't your San Francisco, Los Angeles Democrats. These are very conservative Democrats who are old school Democrats, and these are the kind of Democrats that Trump used to win Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania in 2016. They're here in this district, but they're not going to come to you. They're not going to break 30 years of voting habit because you run a couple of television ads and say, hey, I'm a Republican. I'm working for you. I'm a new type of Republican. No, it has to be it's a hard work. Trump only won those states because he went out there. He threw rallies in the heart of Detroit. He was in Philadelphia. He was in those places, in the trenches there, right? And that's the kind of district this is. But these people, our data shows that there's a lot of voters in this district that that say that any vote, they can vote for any party. And with the way things are moving nationally, how far to the left things are going, a lot of the Democrats in this district are uncomfortable with it.
Why do you think that being so flexible that the incumbent has been able to hold the seat so far, or do you think that he was? Why do you think Jim Costa was elected? Given that you think that it's such a flexible group.
Well, there's a bunch of factors at play here. He's been around for a long time. He was an assemblyman, so he's well known. When he got it, when he first ran for office. Once you get in, he was originally, when he first got in, he was a Blue Dog Democrat, leader of the Blue Dog Coalition. So he used to vote a lot more moderately. However, he's thrown that out the window. His last 3-4 cycles, he's voting 91% with socialists. Now, why is he winning by 19 points when I just told you a lot of voters in the district aren't those type of Democrats? Well, there's a reason for that. One, campaigns haven't been well funded. It's been really tough for the Republican to gain money. Jim has DC money behind him. Jim's also a good politician. So Jim, there's a lot of voters here that don't know that Jim's voting 90% with socialists. They still think of the Jim Costa of 15 years ago, the Blue Dog, the moderate Democrat. And the media here isn't going to call Jim out on his super left-wing votes. They're not going to tell you that he's voting 91% with the squad. And so we need it's the work of the Republicans going to have to go out there, ground and pound, and get it done and spread that message. You're going to have to I'm going to have to educate the voters. My campaign's going to have to educate the voters. And unfortunately, a lot of Republicans in the race haven't had the funding to do so. Like I said, most of the Republicans in the past have raised about $300,000 the whole race. We have $250 on hand now, but we need more. So we're really trying to get donations. Anybody wants to help out on the website, it's going to go a long way. davidforthevalley.com. That's a big thing. Getting any amount helps us. We need grassroots support. Even if I had $2 million in this campaign, I plan to run this campaign like it's dead broke, because that's what it's going to take to win. So we know from our polling that a lot of voters don't even realize, let's put it this way, almost half the voters don't know enough about Jim Costa to say whether they approve or disapprove of the job he's doing. And then if we looked at the rest of our polling data, we would know that if those 50% knew how he was voting, or close to 50%, not 50%, in mid 40s, if those group knew, they probably wouldn't be voting for him. So it's going to take a lot of work. No one's going to help us get that message out. So we need people and volunteers. We're really working on getting volunteers on board in the local area, and getting donations. It does take some money to get this campaign going, and hopefully to keep other people out. There is one other Republican who decided he wants to get in. He's an immigration attorney. He's pro amnesty. He's pro DACA. He's pro all those things, and it's not really going to fly with the Republican voters on here. But California runs it's a jungle primary, so it's a nonpartisan primary. So the top two candidates, regardless of party, advanced to the general election in November. So we were hoping we'd be the only dog in the race, so we could focus on Jim. But now we have to shore up some Republican support just to make sure we get there. I mean, I'm confident we're going to get there. We know we're going to get there, but it changes our plan a little bit. So any support that anyone wants to give, I would greatly appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, tough battle here.
Yeah, no kidding. And I'm actually going to bring up a red question that one of our members asked. His name's Pranav, and Pranav lives in California. I don't believe he's in your district, but I know that he's specifically going to be interested in this because it's such a challenge for Republicans to succeed in a lot of places in California. So I'm going to read his question, and Pranav says, "Hi, David. I want to thank you for representing my home state of California. I was wondering what your stance is on the California GOP, so the California Republican Party. Yep. And considering that the Californian Republican Party is incompetent, how would you make the CAGOP better and gain ground in California?"
Well, so I've jumped into this race, and like I said, I haven't run for office before, and I'm relatively new to California. I come from Connecticut, where many people say the same thing about the Connecticut GOP. You have to understand it's tough. I mean, they're fighting the same battles we're fighting with money and funding and influence. There's strong county leadership here. The 3 counties involved in this race are adamant. They've actually told me it's actually better than it's ever been in terms of the Central California Party communicating with them and offering some support. It's tough. California is a huge state, so they're very focused. You have to understand the Cal GOP's job is to concentrate on the state races and this kind of thing, and they're trying to keep what Republicans they have in power, right? They want to make sure that they don't lose ground. So a lot of the districts, it's so tight out here with the way the lines are drawn, right? You have who draws the line? Well, now actually it's changed, but before the state legislature draws the lines. In the past, now we have a new commission that actually does it, supposedly nonpartisan commission, but we'll see. But so they're working their butts off to keep the status quo, and it's very everybody wants help. Everybody wants them to has different points of view to do things. We just need to like I said, get involved. You can you can have an influence on the state party. Get involved on your local town committees, your county committees. That's how you get an influence with the state party. And if you're unhappy with something, you can make your voice heard. You can be a committee member. They're the elected committee members on the county leadership. So that gets you up you get votes in the state assembly or in the state governing the party, right? In the conventions and stuff. So if there's something you don't think they're doing right, get involved. That's what it comes down to. But they're working hard too to keep the Republicans where they're at. I mean, it's tough. I understand the frustration. Believe me. People have run this race. This is typically it's never been a targeted race. So nobody's really helped out. It's kind of like you're on your own. And right now we're not. We don't have an endorsement from any of the local county parties. So we're on our own, still fighting that fight. And yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's a tough issue, but I do know that I've heard that it is better than it's been. So that's something to take comfort in. But if you're unhappy about it, I mean, get involved in your local committees. It goes back to the same thing with voting. People have to get involved. It's time consuming, but you can join your county committee. All you got to do is go down, sign up, and you'll have more influence than you think.
Yeah, that local level really means a lot.
Yeah.
All right, Palm, you have another question for David.
Yes. 2 quick questions for you, David. Do you think, you mentioned the economy earlier, people were just kind of getting fed up with it, including the blackouts and all that. Do you think if the economy kind of sluggish as it usually is, even though we've been adding jobs technically, but they're just the same jobs that we lost from last year, do you think any negative shifts in the economy will negatively affect your area enough for Blue Dog Democrats to vote for you?
Well,
And go ahead and answer that one. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So absolutely. So this is so the Central Valley agriculture is the big thing here, right?
Yeah.
And our agriculture industry is really suffering right now because there's no water. And it's not because there's no water because you hear Gavin Newsom and the Democrats are always on TV ranting and raving that there's no water because it's climate change, right? Well, what they don't tell you, and what people like Jim Costa, who supposedly who is a farmer, these people aren't saying. So 2 of the last 4 years in California were some of the wettest on record. And we didn't take advantage of that because we haven't built new water storage. Why haven't we built new water storage? The Temperance Flat Dam project was actually approved by voters in California. It was never built. If we had that dam, how much water would we have kept to be using now? A lot of our water is getting diverted away to the Bay Area, to LA, and out to the ocean for environmental reasons. So economically, the Central Valley is already suffering because our farmers are, farming agriculture is a big thing out here. So, there was a UC Berkeley study that says we're going to lose about over the next 10 to 20 years, 10 to 15 years, if nothing is done to get us new above ground water storage, we're going to lose about 45,000 jobs a year. Okay, we've already been on a downward trajectory over the last 6 years in terms of jobs in the Central Valley for agriculture. And that's our biggest industry. And we're going to lose like $1.1 billion every year in the Central Valley. So it's already hitting us economically. And the other issues would just compound it worse. We suffered a lot of hard lockdowns here in California across the state. So there's a lot of people that are fed up. There's a lot of people that are recognizing we need time for a change. And yeah, I think, nobody wants bad economic times because it affects families and it affects people. But I think it's really a message we're going to use to hit these Blue Dog Democrats. Say, listen, it's almost like the message Trump used in Michigan. Hey, your union bosses have been telling you to vote Democrat for decades, and they're sitting there pretty with their jobs and they're getting their money back and forth. But your plants and your jobs are the ones that are closing. So they're telling you to vote Democrat, and they don't care because they're not suffering the consequences. And these union workers said, yeah, you're right. So I believe that message is going to play well in the district here.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, you kind of touched on my next question, was related to water. What do you plan to do about, how would you compare that dam project you mentioned and the amount of funding that Jim Costa wants to raise, which is 32, I'm reading right, $32 billion
$32 billion
for a train
for the train
line that probably doesn't have the economic benefits compared to, what kind of research can you present to your constituents that would you make your project be much better?
Well, so the train, the train is, it's a polarizing subject. And early on, people were on board with the idea of the bullet train, right? Because it was supposed to be, it was a novel idea. It's going to be this super fast train that connects the whole state, basically. And it was supposed to be done in like 5 years. And the original estimate was like $15 billion, $20 billion. And now here we are, 10 years later, and we're nowhere near closer to getting the train done. And people are starting to say, wait a minute. This never-ending price tag is we got to stop. We got to say, listen, we can't. I supported the train in the past, but the price tag is getting out of control. And for Costa to sit there and say he understands that farmers need water. Well, we're going to be facing one of the most severe droughts in a long time here this year. I've talked to numerous farmers around the district that say, listen, this is going to be tough. You wait and see what happens in August, and that's when things are really going to be bad. Groundwater supplies are drying up, aquifers aren't being refilled, and here we got Jim Costa, who says he's a farmer. He wants to put 32 billion towards the train, and nothing towards new water storage. Him and Nancy Pelosi announced a few months ago. We issued a press release. It's still on our website. They announced what's called the Canal Conveyance Restoration Act. And ooh, that sounds great, right? I mean, Canal Conveyance Restoration Act. And it gets like $270 million to restore the broken canals in the valley, or the outdated canals in the valley, which sounds great, right? Sounds good. But hidden within that act, it actually bars any federal money from being used to develop new above ground water storage. So the act itself is any farmer will tell you, the only way we're going to alleviate the drought conditions is we need above ground water storage. It has to be done. Otherwise, we're going to lose farms. So, the temperance flat is a big thing. The Trump administration was really close to raising Shasta Dam 2 feet. A few years back, it stalled out at the end. They were really close. They almost had it done. But we need to capitalize. So nobody can make it rain. No politician can make it rain. Jim Costa can't make it rain. I can't make it rain. But if we have the adequate water storage, we can take advantage when it does rain. We should have been taking advantage of the 2 of the last 4 years that were some of the wettest on record. So that's the message we're going with. Yeah, listen, the train, forget about the train. That's not the pressing issue. We need to be concerned about water storage. The money shouldn't be going to the train right now. Why are you? It's like you're poking a hole. You're trying to deal with the issue that's not the most pressing at hand. Our farmers need water, and they need it now.
Well, why don't we shift gears a little bit here? I've actually got a question from Sublime and Slime, who's one of our server leaders here. Mm-hmm. He couldn't make it, but he is listening in. So his question is, what are your thoughts on a balanced budget, constitutional amendment? And the second part would be what you think can be done to help alleviate public union liabilities.
So we need to rein in the government spending. Our government, everybody's talking about raising taxes. Everybody was taxes, give us money. Well, how about this? How about we have enough money to fund the necessary programs if we spent our money wisely, right? So we need to go back to fiscal responsibility, because we're putting the next generation at risk. We're racking up debt. We're paying for programs. We're robbing from Social Security in instances. And there's no reason for it. A lot of the money being spent is being wasted on wasteful programs. The government needs to learn how to properly manage its money, right? It's like I related back, when I was a teenager once, when I got my first credit card, it was all fun, right? Hey, I give them this plastic credit card and I get whatever I want. That's how the government works. The government's like, hey, just keep giving us more and more money. We need more and more of your money because we don't have enough money to fund these necessary programs. That's not true. The government has enough money to fund the programs that are necessary. Republicans always get this bad rap. The Democrats say, oh, the Republicans want to cut your Social Security. I don't want to cut your Social Security. I want to cut the wasteful programs, and we wouldn't have to worry about, there'd be funding for Social Security if we weren't wasting money on things like gender studies in Afghanistan, right? And then what was the second part there?
The second part was, what do you think can be done to alleviate public union liabilities?
So unions is a tough thing. I mean, everybody says, it's tough because we need to work hard. The union fight is a tough one because the unions get, they never want to hear you come on the attack against them. I was a member of a teachers union. I have some thoughts on teachers unions. And I think a lot of people in California saw for the first time that who were these teachers unions really working for? Like, they still don't want to go back to school, right? And so, unions, I mean, we need to, we need to push back against and make sure the unions are doing what they're supposed to be doing. I mean, a lot of the problems we had that killed Detroit and killed those places because unions got too powerful and out of control. And sure, all these $60 wages sound great, but when your plants close and your jobs go away, you're not going to have those $60 an hour jobs.
No.
So it actually hurt people. So we need to rein in the government. The federal government is far too powerful. It's far too much injected in every single aspect of our lives. It's not just with the balanced budget, it's with everything. I mean, you saw the president saying they want to go door to door and tell people to get vaccines, right? So, I mean, when our country was founded, the federal government wasn't. I think the founders would probably look right now and say, "Man, I can't believe we never intended the federal government to be as powerful and spending as much money as it is." So, in general, governmental power, we need to start giving more back to the local and states.
Well, you mentioned education in there, and I'm actually curious because education seems to be a big topic the last couple of weeks, especially between critical race theory or just critical theory in general being a big topic, and the back and forth of whether or not it's actually being taught in schools, and then to what degree. I'm just curious, in our current situation, what do you think, well, I could say Republicans or just conservatives, what do you think we can do to basically redirect that back to sanity?
So here's the thing. I was a teacher. I taught in the public schools. Most of my teaching experience was in Connecticut. I taught inner city in Connecticut for almost 3 years, and then I taught in Catholic school before I moved out here. I've gone to Catholic school my whole life. So my personal experience with education was a lot different than my professional experience with education. And what can people do? So one thing we need to do is, one, the federal government needs to take a step back from education, because that's a big issue that I see and that I believe. So, California spends some of the most on education. We actually have some of the worst ranked schools. So power needs to be given back to the local communities, local school boards, local town councils, state legislature. The federal government shouldn't be the federal. Who has a better idea of what a kid in Madera, California needs to learn, right? Some bureaucrat in Washington, or somebody that's in Madera, California on the local school board, right? They know better what their kids need. That's not to say the federal government couldn't give money to help aid education. They can give money, but they need to take a more hands-off approach. Um, and what a kid in Madera needs is different than what a kid in Philadelphia needs, So, but what can be done? Well, people have to get involved. Honestly, it all goes back to the getting involved. People have to understand you have a lot more influence than you think in terms of local communities. So, one of the things I'm trying to push and help the local Republican parties out here is, hey, people aren't happy out here. They don't like critical race theory. It goes totally against what the people in this district believe. But you want to change it? You need people to stand up and fight for school board. Get involved. Go to school board meetings. Make your voices heard. Those school boards, you might think that your voice isn't being heard. These are smaller gatherings and communities. They're going to pay attention. Run for school board. If you're a parent and you're passionate about knowing what's going on in the classroom, that's where the change is going to happen. People need to step up, and we're starting to see it happening around the country. I mean, I've been reading articles about it. People are stepping up and saying, I'm going to run for school board. We're going to take over school boards. We're going to recall school boards. We're going to change school boards. So it honestly goes back to getting involved. Everyone's worried about these things. Now we have to kind of put those worries into action. Yeah, it's time consuming. We all have jobs. We all have lives. But if you're really concerned about it, that's what it's going to take, because the Democrats are good at it. Like I said, they're involved in everything. So we have to get involved. That's what it's going to take. Go to school board meetings. Run for school board. Somebody you think would be a good school board fit, tell them, hey, you should run for school board. That's where you're going to be able to make a difference. You have a lot more power than you think.
It's really just crazy seeing a lot of these things. I mean, it almost feels like a joke, right? Like that some of these topics are in school. And I'm wondering if we're just waiting for the cultural response, and it's just it just takes time, right? Like things have to get into the ears of people who aren't completely focused on politics all the time, like some of us.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. A lot of us listen, a lot of people just want to go about their day, right? Get their job done, see their family, see their kids, and they don't even, they're not heavily involved in it, and then they realize what's going on. So if people are starting to wake up more and more, one of the good things the pandemic actually shed light on is what was going on in the classrooms. A lot of parents, saw for the first time what was being taught because they were home all day with their kids, or they saw they had to take more of an active role in helping their kids with their education. And they said, wait a minute, this is what's really going on. So yeah, I mean, we need to get involved. That's what it's going to take. That's how you're going to change things. You have an influence, you have a voice. It can be done. It's not easy, especially in a state like California, but there's more people out there that agree with you and than you think.
Absolutely, and it's just sometimes hard to hear those people's voices because sometimes they're afraid to speak out.
Yeah, or they're not focused on politics 24/7 either, right?
Yep, very true.
Yeah, so yeah.
But yeah, I did have another question here from Nux, who's another one of our admins here. He wants to know that about criminal justice reform. So before Trump, most Republicans were afraid to talk about criminal justice reform because it would make them look weak on law and order. But taxpayers are now paying tens of billions of dollars a year for a broken system where half of former felons reoffend. What kind of criminal justice reforms would you support to save money and reduce recidivism?
Well, it's a big issue in California because our governor's actually letting people out all over the place, and it's creating a huge problem here. And a lot of these people are getting picked up again. You're right; it's an issue. See, this is a good question because it's an issue that nobody wanted. Republicans didn't want to touch before Trump. Trump touched it. There were some Republicans who didn't think it was that great of an idea. And I don't think it necessarily makes us look weak on law enforcement. It's kind of the same thing with the immigration issue, right? A lot of people don't want to touch it because it's that hot potato. But changes need to be made. We have to. A lot of it starts with our values and how we're, being a teacher. I try to tell people about what's happening here. So a lot of it, honestly, is a societal thing. We have to do a better job of, raising our kids, raising our generation, teaching kids about consequences. So one of the things that was frustrating in schools is, so I went to Catholic school my whole life. If I swore at the teacher and I didn't do my work, I either got kicked out of school or I got zeros, right? And a lot of kids right now, unfortunately, are growing up. I was cussed out almost every day by 7:30 in the morning. So, and there were very little consequences. So what's happening now is we're not adequately preparing our kids or teaching them proper values. And we're seeing a lot of these more extreme situations with law enforcement because these kids have been taught their whole life, well, I can swear at my teacher and get away with it and there's no consequence. So then they get up, they grow up, they get pulled over by a cop. They've been taught their whole life that there's no consequence for the action. So, hey, I'll just tell a cop to go, I'll swear at him and nothing's going to happen to me. And the police aren't going to take that. So we have to do a better job of, going back and one of the issues is families, right? Keeping families together. I mean, studies show it. Kids get in a lot of trouble and get down the wrong path because of being out of two-parent households. And, you hear a lot of people like Candace Owens talking about it. That's a big step in criminal justice reform is really rebuilding, making sure we make inroads in the Black community, promoting fathers staying in the house, keeping families together is a battle. So I think those kind of reforms, things we can do to help in that way is going to benefit criminal justice reform. We're spending, you're right, we're spending a lot of money on stuff and people are getting let out and getting rearrested. Now in California, people get arrested like 6-7 times but that's another thing. So we shouldn't just be letting people out unless they're ready to be let out. That's the thing. Right now, we're letting everyone out in California, and a lot of people are getting rearrested. So it's not a very efficient system, and it's not working very well. I mean, you read the newspapers, like you'd be like, "Oh, a person got arrested. He's been arrested 4 previous times." That shouldn't happen, right? So I believe, I thought the First Step Act was a great thing by President Trump to make inroads on the issue. And we need to take that and we need to come up with ways. We need to look at the underlying causes of where, what's happening in the communities. A lot of it isn't just about criminal justice. Like I said, a lot of it goes back to, the family system. I mean, a lot of problems are just, we need to make sure that we're doing a better job keeping families together and teaching our kids better values and teaching our kids consequences for actions. A lot of it starts with how we're raising our kids, to be honest with you.
Well, why don't we actually switch over to another question I've got from Auburn Fighter, who is not able to speak right now, but he had a two-part question. One, you've covered a little bit, but it's what is the confidence that your district will become more Republican? And the second half of the question is what I'm interested, and it's more on the national level, so it won't be your district specifically, but he's curious what your opinion is on thinking if California is flippable in the future. Do you ever think we'll see a Republican California?
I mean, I'm confident in our race and our message. I don't think it's going to be easy because, there's a lot that's still left to play. There's still, we still are waiting on redistricting. We're not going to know how the district's going to look until next year. But I strongly believe that this is a winnable race. The data I've collected and the studies we've done show us that there's an avenue here for victory. It can be done. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take a lot of work on my part, getting the message out. So I think we have the numbers down. We know where we need to be. We believe it's there. We know it's there. We know it's there. We know the opportunity is there. It's just going to be a matter of getting our message out, hitting on the right message. In terms of California, people are starting to wake up. People are it's tough here. I mean, gas here, our gas is getting up to almost $5. It's over $5 in a lot of places. The cost of living is really high. So people are starting to change a little bit. It's a tough road because you need to do the work. It's not going to be easy. So this is the problem. We have to we have to do work as candidates to make a change. So it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a hard road. I think we're going to win this thing. From I've talked to a lot of people that are Democrats. Say, hey, Jim's been there a long time. It's always time to look for a change. So I'm confident in our race. I'm confident in where we are. We just, we need to raise more money just to make sure that we're taken seriously around the country, because this is going to be a targeted race. And we want to show them that we have I believe we got the campaign, we got the message to win. Now it's just a matter of getting people on our side, getting volunteers, getting support, getting it out there. Because if we put it all together, we're going to shock the world, I think, next year, with what we can do here based on the data I've seen and where we believe we need to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I see that a lot too, especially people talking about like, oh, well, California used to be a Republican state, right? And they say, some will say that it was a deep Republican state and now it's not. And a lot of defeatist attitudes, I think, come out in a lot of that conversation. But
It's
I mean,
hard.
I'm sure, yeah, you're
It's
right.
hard.
You have to put the work in as a big part of it, because it
It's
did
hard.
not
Yeah.
flip overnight for sure.
No, the Democrats worked a long time. They worked to flip California. We have to work to flip it back. Kevin Kiley, who's running for governor, was posting there's 65 to 70% of Californians self-identify as conservative, right? So that is not that's a huge number, and that's a telling sign. This is not a far gone left state. Most people don't consider themselves super liberal, San Francisco, LA type liberals, but it's about messaging and it's about working hard. They need to see a viable campaign out there, right? People need to see me out there, and they need to see me. They need to see our presence. Say, hey, wait a minute, we can vote for this. This is a chance to jump ship and to win. So yeah, that's the same thing across the state. It's not easy. It's going to take a lot of work, but we need people that are willing to do it. I'm willing to do it. I'm going to be out there. We've already been out there as much as possible. This thing's early, and we go to events almost every day. We got something going on.
Well, Nico, why don't you give us your question?
Hey, good evening, gentlemen. Radio check.
Yeah, you're good, man.
All right, hey, Mr. David. Good evening.
Good evening.
Especially since you're in such a state known for its unconstitutionality, will you work to repeal the unconstitutional National Firearms Act?
I am 110%. Pro-gun, pro-Second Amendment. So I'm going to fight anything that's trying to infringe on the Second Amendment. We need to stand up and defend the Second Amendment, and it's not just the Second Amendment; it's all amendments. So people need to realize, one, we got to be able to protect our families. That's the second. People should have the right to protect your families, but it's also about protecting our rights. Once the government takes a right away, never comes back. And people don't understand this enough. So once you give up a right to the government, you're never going to get it back. So we need to make sure that we preserve our rights, because if we give them up, even for temporary security, like we saw with COVID, look how hard some people in the government are fighting to give up those powers, right? There's a lot of people fight. They still don't want to give up those COVID powers. So we need to make sure. I'm going to fight for all rights. Every one of those Bill of Rights is important, and we shouldn't be giving any of them up. And we need to stick in line with the Constitution. The Constitution says everyone has the right to bear arms. People have the right to bear arms. We need to fight for it. That is an important right that needs to be protected. It's under attack, and more people than not support it. So I will be a strong voice for it, and I'm going to fight anything tooth and nail to protect people's right to bear arms.
I'm actually curious there, I'm such a devil's advocate person when it comes to like where our party is and everything. But it's interesting to see the difference between a lot of people that are, like, hey, we want to focus on, we want to respect states' rights, to function in their own capacity. And then you have the other side of, like maybe the Second Amendment, absolutists, which would say, and this is a more popular opinion than it used to be, which would say, heck, let's just make it a federal, let's just reinforce it at the federal level. You being a candidate for a federal level position, I'm curious what your thoughts are on the balance between the two.
Well, I really believe that there's a lot of things the federal government shouldn't have its hands in dictating rules and regulations. I talked about this earlier. The federal government has way too many hands in the cookie jar right now, and they want to control everything. And it's not just gun rights; it's almost everything. We have to limit that federal power, and we need to preserve our rights on a federal level. In terms of gun stuff, not just guns, but like the states should be able to decide more what they want to do. Guns, I mean, that's a federal law. I mean, it's written in the Constitution. People in the United States have the right to bear arms, so it's a federal issue in my book. I would argue that laws that are restricting it it makes it a federal issue because it's against what's in the Constitution. So, but on a side note, states should be able to have more power. The federal government doesn't need to control everything. And the framers didn't intend our federal government to be this huge, powerful monstrosity as it is. They actually envisioned the state and local governments being the more powerful parts of our country, right? The federal government originally was just supposed to be dealing with defense and infrastructure. And so our federal government just wants to have control over things. But the federal government, people in Washington, bureaucrats in Washington don't know what somebody in Fresno, California needs better than people in Fresno, California or in California, right? So the people at the state and local levels on many different issues have a better idea of what their people need. So yeah, it's a complex issue, but federalism is important, man. Federalism is an important concept. I tell it to my kids when I was teaching. It's a word that nobody really even talks about anymore, but it's one of the most important words in our government that's built on. Federalism is very important. We need to make sure that the federal government isn't overstepping its bounds.
It's definitely a fine line between the two, and I think that's going to be a really interesting conversation as we go forward, as our party evolves. I'd like to bring up again Palm Louis. He's got probably another really good question for you.
Thanks for taking the question again. My question is, can certain counties in California conduct their own forensic investigations of their elections?
Yes. So counties can audit. County boards of supervisors can call for audits. There's been a movement here to try and get Fresno to do it. They haven't approved it, but yeah, you can call for audits. Yep, that is allowed.
I see. Do you think
it has to go through the courts? Obviously, it's going to be. I mean, it's going to be challenged. So
right.
Obviously, it gets approved. Somebody's going to sue to stop it. So, but they are authorized to do that. Yes.
Good. I don't know if it'd be worth it to do in any of in California per se, for the presidential or any primaries, because nothing.
Well, I mean, it would be it's worth it in some cases. Like I said, a lot of it is honestly the bigger battle than people realize is cleaning up voter rolls. I think people people really have to realize that, especially in big cities, voter rolls are really outdated, very bloated. And that's where we need to fight to clean up those voter rolls, especially in places like here where, unsolicited mail-in balloting was going out. So if you have dirty voter rolls, those ballots are going out even if that person's not there anymore. So cleaning up voter rolls is a huge thing that needs to be done.
I see. One last question is, do you think there's barring any kind of funding for new above ground water storage, is there anything that you can do for like a PR campaign that the citizens in your area can do to save water and just help themselves?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of the water, so there's federal laws and there's state laws. So Fortunately, a lot of the water that's in the reservoirs and stuff, it's already spoken for. It's out. We have what, there's a lot of rules and regulations how that water is distributed, who owns it, and where it's going. So it's really tough in this area. Or in city, I could say everybody could sit here and dig big holes in their backyard and make their own reservoirs, but a lot of the water is spoken for, and unfortunately, I talked a little bit about where are all the votes in California. They're in LA and San Francisco. So they got to make sure those people are happy. So a lot of our water gets sent there, right? At the expense of our farmers. So I'm trying to get people together to stand up to join my campaign so we can fight like heck to bring change. Like, we need people who are going to get into Congress who are going to stand up and say, no, this has to be fixed, and draw media attention to the issue, because unfortunately the water is spoken for, and it's, the state runs it pretty quick. There's really not a way for us to conserve enough to help our farmers and to help the valley without changing rules and regulations.
I see. Yeah, that reminds me. One last, if you could comment on the government overreach and federalism. What did you make of the Clean Water Act that from maybe a year or two ago? I think it
Yeah,
might have
so I
been
was
nixed.
just
Mhm.
looking in that. So this is another thing. It's a regulation that's hurting farmers. It's done. So the environmental movement is really, they're like, the Clean Water Act is hurting. It's not just that, it's a lot of things. So all in the name of the environment, right? So what's happening right now is we have one of the fish called the Delta smelt. They're trying to protect this little fish. So they're flushing all this water out into the Delta to try and save this fish that's pretty much already extinct, that's not recovering. But they're still doing it. And then there's like, oh, we need more, actually some of the water is getting pumped out to put sand on our beaches. I don't know if anybody knew that. So these rules and regulations, they're just government stepping in spots, giving in to the environmentalists at the expense of our farmers and our communities. Because what I say to those things is, at the end of the day, if there's no water, those fish aren't going to be around anyway. So we're losing water. And I mean, what's going to happen when there's no water? Because if we lose our farming, the Central Valley accounts for almost half the fruits and vegetables that go out to the rest of the United States. So if we lose that, we're going to become dependent on foreign sources for our food, and that's not ever a good thing. Look what happened now that we're back to being dependent on foreign sources for our oil. Prices going through the roof, right? So yeah, the Clean Water Act, Trump tried to repeal the clean water rule. Our farmers we need to step back with regulations, because that's what's hurting our farmers here.
Alrighty.
Over-regulation kills everything.
It does. It absolutely. I mean, I understand the argument
Good
for specific
intentions.
situations. Exactly.
Sometimes it starts with good intentions, but man, it spirals out of control really quick.
Aren't humans just difficult?
Yes.
Well, I've got one more question that we're gonna do to wrap up the
All
event
right.
here. Let you go for the evening from Sublime and Slime. But I believe Pranav has something he wanted to ask or tell you here.
Go ahead.
Well, before I start, I just want to say thanks for trying to run for my state. It's really appreciative. But I just
No
want
problem.
to ask something for it's just like a comedic take, not really anything political or anything. I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on corn pop, like the one that Joe Biden was talking about.
Oh man, I pretty much laugh at a lot of stuff that comes out of Joe Biden's mouth. Oh man, every day I'm sending memes to people, making fun of all this stuff. But it just goes to show, hey, it's funny. I'm
We
more
gotta have fun.
I like Sleepy Joe, man. I like to talk about that. I always make that joke. There's a lot of things Biden says every day that make me shake my head and laugh.
Alrighty. Well, the last question I've got for you, and then we'll talk about where people can go to support you and can help you get to where you want to go. Sub asks, do you think term limits are doable for Congress, both House and the Senate? And do you plan on taking a term limit pledge if elected?
So people ask me this all the time. When I was making donor calls, somebody said, well, why do you want to be a politician? I said, I don't want to be a politician. I stepped forward because I'm concerned about the country. I studied history. I was a history teacher. And I really value our country, our Constitution. I think it's the greatest country on earth. and I'm motivated to run because I believe that people need to go to Congress for the right reasons. So many people have been there for so long, they forget why they're there. And maybe when they originally got there, they had good intentions of working for the people that represent them. But, when you get in there, you get in that money, the lobbyist money, basically to answer that, I'm not looking at this as trying to be a career. I want to get to Washington. I want to make the necessary changes. I want to do what's best for the people in my district. I want to get things changed for them so that our farmers are better off. And term limits are tough because you got to get people to vote to limit their own terms, right? So, but yeah, I would take a term limit pledge. I think it's important because I don't think people should be there for 40, 50 years. I don't think it's not meant to be a career, because you lose track of what you're there for. I want to fight for the people of my valley. I want to go there. I don't think my wife would want it to make it a career, to be honest with you. But I want to get there. I want to be there enough time to get things done, but I don't want to be there forever because I don't want to ever lose track of why I'm doing this. I never will because this is who I am. I'm kind of a down to earth guy, and I think we need more people. We need fresh blood up there because that's what's going to change. Money controls everything, and when people are there too long, it becomes a little harder to remember what you're fighting for. And I'm going there because I want to fight for the people of the Central Valley, because ever since we moved out here, we love it. We think it's the greatest place to live, and we think it deserves better representation, and the people here deserve better. So that's why I'm going there. I'm not going there to be a lifetime politician. I'm going there to do what the job of a representative is supposed to be, and to fight for the people I represent. So yeah, I would support term limits. I think it's important. We have them in other races. It's going to be tough. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be really tough to get people who are elected to vote for it. But if we get new blood in there, this is the thing. We have to get people that want to do it for the right reasons. So we need to vet and look up candidates and find people that want to get in politics for the right reason. Like I said, I didn't get into politics because I wanted to be a politician. And that's kind of what we need. We need some new people in there, rather than the old types. And on a side note, if you want me to talk a little about where you can help me out and stuff, you want me to go with
Absolutely,
that?
yeah. Tell us where to go. Where can we help you out?
So listen, I'd be lying if I told you I didn't need donations. I do. This is a tough race. Jim just released his quarterly. We did really well. We had 250,000 on hand, which is really good for a Republican at this stage in the race.
Good start.
But Jim's gonna have millions of DC money. He's got 600,000 now. He'll have a lot more. So any donations, greatly appreciated. You can do that on my website, davidforthevalley.com. It's David, F-O-R, thevalley.com. Other things you can do for me, follow me on social media. We're on Facebook, David Giglio for Congress. We're on Twitter and Instagram. It's David Giglio. So my last name, so my full name.
Giglio.
It's my username on here. David Giglio CA is my username on all the platforms: Twitter, Instagram, Getter. On Facebook, you can just look for David Giglio for Congress. Follow those pages. If you're in the area, if you know people in the area, tell them about me. Get them to sign up on my website to volunteer. That's a big thing. Even if you're not in the area, you can sign up to volunteer and maybe make phone calls for us when we get later on down the line. But any donation is really appreciated. And if you want, I'll send you a bumper sticker or something. But we do need money to win this race, to keep up with DC money. We're fighting the DC establishment. Jim Costa is the definition of a lifetime politician. And if we can flip this seat, it would be historic, because this has been a seat that has never been held by a Republican. So if we flip this, we're going to be history, and it's going to mean good things for conservatives in 2022 if the seat can flip.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's exciting stuff. I think you're off to a great start, David. We're really excited to see where you can go from here. And yeah, so everybody, I want to thank everybody for popping in. David, thank you so much for joining us.
No
this
problem.
event.
And if later on down the line you guys want to talk to me again, we could try and set something up.
And feel free to stay in the server, by the way.
Oh yeah, I'll be here. I'll be here.
So.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Not a problem. To anybody listening, we host these as regularly as possible at saveamericachat.com. David, thanks again for joining us. Bigfoot for MC and with me here, and everybody have a solid night.
Thank you guys. See ya.